Good morning, good afternoon, or good night, depending on audience is listening to our communication. Before beginning our presentation, we would like to say thank you to the Organizing Committee of Teaching and for Understanding 4th Anniversary Conference. It is Yessica Segovia from the University of Castilla-La Mancha. I'm assistant professor in the Faculty of Education, Ciudad Real, Spain. We are working hand-to-hand with my colleague and Professor Jorge Abellán on applying pedagogical model in especially sport education and game-based approaches as teaching game for understanding with intellectual disability students. Now I'm going to present one of our latest work titled Practical Recommendation in order to apply game-based approaches within students with intellectual disabilities. First, and about the introduction of this topic, teaching game for understanding and game-based approaches and individuals with special education needs, literature showed that in spite of practice and research of pedagogical model in physical education has increased over the last decade, several reviews highlighted that pedagogical model has been scarcely implemented, and consequently researching in group of individuals with special education needs in Fernández-Río Iglesias' work in their review published in 2022. Additionally, Block and College warned that pedagogical models have not been designed with students with disability in mind. Game-based approaches have worked with the aim avoid sport learning using the isolated skill learning way, while his main is tactical learning. However, few experiments have been designed and developed in context with students with special education needs. For example, DMIC study present teaching game for understanding experiences applying two sports, table tennis and kickball. In both cases, the aim is to give students with disability a voice, evaluating their motivation, commitment, activity levels, and their communication skills through questionnaires adapted to their characteristics. However, the use of the questionnaires makes it too difficult to delve deeper into the listening to their voice. In this context, where the topic is little studied and applied, this work aims to increase knowledge about how to start in the application of game-based approaches with a student with intellectual disability in a special school placement. For it, we present a sport technique pedagogical proposal based on main principle and practice feature of game-based approaches. The participants were chosen intentionally due to the interest shown in the development of the research and the program by the participating teacher. The center is one of the 24 special school placements that are located in the autonomous community of Castilla-La Mancha. The school is private in nature and provides official education in concert with the government of Castilla-La Mancha. All the students of the school participate in the project, a total of 12 students, on which are studying EBO and 9 TVA. Two of the levels with special school placement are usually organized in our country. It's mainly Spain. The student has an age range of 14-23 years, and the physical education teacher was 29 years old and has 2 years of experience at the same school and the school when we did the program, and she was training in teaching and for understanding in her degree studies. It is important to highlight that there are no magic recipes in the field of attention to diversity at physical education. However, if different strategies are combined, positive results can be obtained, which increase the participation of a student with disability. In order to select the appropriate strategies, it is essential to rely on research in this regard. For the development of the program, we use some key ingredients. Of course, a sport technique pedagogical proposal based on main principle and practice feature of game-based approaches was applied, but in addition, the theoretical framework of the universal design for learning and task adaptation are included as a part of the design. In the case of the application of universal design for learning, it is implied a paradigm shift in the treatment of diversity in physical education context. It means changing the idea of adapting the tasks or lesson previously designed so that they can be carried out by a student with disability to anticipate the needs of the student beforehand, designing with diversity in mind, try to minimize individual differences, offering open design in which all students can be included. And the final aims will be to develop lessons in positive environment that favor the integral development of the student. About what game teach depend on the approach, vertical or horizontal, but following almost game taxonomy modified and explained by Méndez Jiménez, Fernández-Río Iglesias, as we can see in the screen, we choose target games unopposed because of its tactical complexity, favouring learning and its adaptation to our student. Especially in our programs, modified games based on the dartboard and bowling were used. Of course, and following the future of game-based approaches, modified game was the main task in the program and lessons. In total, the program was 15 lessons. But in our program, we focus in modified game allow adaptation to different characteristics of the student using task adaptation. To guide the process of making adaptation, the three models will be used, which propose 4 categories that can be adapted in any physical education task. This is teaching style, rules, environment, and equipment. For example, regarding the adaptation of materials, a data was used that allow a student with intellectual and motor disabilities to participate in a bowling task, one of the chosen games. And finally, the questioning was done in small groups, allowing all student participation regardless of their learning levels. Data was collected from the following instruments. The first one, session planning. The process of co-design and co-production of the tasks between the research team and the teacher was documented. 2 interviews with the teacher in an intermediate lesson, specifically in lesson number 6, and at the end of the program. And a researcher took a field note as well as all the informal conversation with the teacher. About result, the teacher during the planning of the program was concerned about the success of the questioning with the student with different levels in the same group. Initially, in relation to the teaching game for understanding on game-based approaches, the teacher had no problem in application modifying games to work the tactical principle of task game with the students. However, the teacher pointed out the questioning as the most complex strategy to adapt to all her students. She noticed that not all students answered her questions, and she thought that only a few students understood her questions. Applying the questioning strategy in a small group allowed students with a lower level to have more opportunities to respond, preventing students with a higher levels from always answering the teacher question. And finally, the application on universal design for learning and adaptation of tasks through the 3 model allowed all the students to participate in a context of positive physical education through the game-based approaches and specifically the teaching game for understanding. And finally, and as a future directions, on the one hand, it is recommended that researchers assess student learning. It is mean how much they learned, and on the other hand, as a future practical direction, programs that's programmed in tactical complexity should be the same for the student. And thank you for your attention. Our email is in your screen, and we will be happy to answer any question from the audience.